Talk Ava. Learn English with confidence.
Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're learning English and you've ever stopped in the middle of a sentence because you weren't sure whether to say borrow or lend, you're in good company. These two words confuse many English learners because they talk about the same situation, but from two different points of view. Today, we're going to make them simple with everyday conversations, easy examples, and a few stories that you might even recognize from your own life.
That's a fun topic because almost everyone has mixed them up at least once. I remember hearing someone say, "Can I lend your pen?" I understood what they wanted, but it sounded unusual because native speakers would normally say, "Can I borrow your pen?" A tiny change can make your English sound much more natural.
That's what we're focusing on today. We won't memorize difficult grammar rules. We'll look at how people really use these words in daily conversations. By the end of this episode, you'll probably notice these words everywhere.
And the nice thing is that once you understand the idea behind them, you don't have to stop and think every single time. It starts to feel natural.
Let's imagine a simple situation. I forgot my notebook at home, and I need one for today's meeting. I walk over to you and say, "Can I borrow your notebook?"
Then I smile and say, "Sure, I can lend it to you."
Notice what's happening. I'm the person who wants to receive the notebook, so I use borrow.
And I'm the person who owns it and gives it to someone else, so I use lend.
Same notebook, same situation, different point of view.
That's probably the easiest way to remember it.
Let's try another one. My phone battery is dead and yours still has plenty of power. I ask, "Can I borrow your charger?"
I answer, "Of course, I'll lend you my charger."
Nothing complicated. We simply changed the direction.
One word follows the person receiving something, and the other follows the person giving something.
I used to teach this to students with a little trick. Imagine you're holding an object. If it's coming toward you, you borrow it. If it's leaving your hand to help someone else, you lend it.
That's easy to picture. I like learning with images because they're easier to remember than grammar charts.
Me too. Grammar has its place, but everyday pictures often stay in your mind longer.
Speaking of everyday situations, what's the thing people borrow most often?
Pens.
Pens?
Pens. Pens disappear everywhere. Offices, schools, libraries. Someone says, "Can I borrow your pen?" 5 minutes later, the pen begins a new life somewhere else.
That's funny because I had a favorite blue pen during university. I let one classmate use it for a minute. I never saw that pen again.
So technically, you lent your pen.
Yes, although I don't think it ever came back.
That happens a lot. Sometimes people borrow something with good intentions, but life gets busy and they forget.
Which reminds me of books. I love reading, but I'm always careful before lending my favorite books.
Same here. Some books have little notes inside or memories attached to them. They feel personal.
When someone asks, "Can I borrow this book?" I usually pause for a second before answering.
And that's a very natural conversation.
Here's another thing learners notice. People often hear, "Can I borrow?" much more than "Can I lend?"
That's true, because many conversations begin with the person asking for something.
The person who needs help usually starts talking first.
Then the other person replies with lend.
So you'll often hear both words in the same conversation.
Like this, "Can I borrow $20?
Sure, I'll lend you 20.
Simple.
Natural.
Easy to remember.
I think learners sometimes overthink these words because they look similar in meaning.
They do, but the direction changes everything.
Once you notice who's giving and who's receiving, the choice becomes much easier.
Before we move deeper into this topic, we have a question for everyone listening today. Question for you. Have you ever mixed up borrow and lend while speaking English? Write one sentence in the comments using either borrow or lend. We'll be reading your examples, so don't be shy.
We really enjoy seeing how you're using today's lesson in real life. Reading your examples also helps other English learners, so feel free to join the conversation in the comments.
If you're enjoying these practical English conversations, remember to like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's learning English too. It helps us create more lessons like this.
I hear one mistake quite often. Someone walks up to a friend and says, "Can you borrow me your phone?" Native speakers understand the meaning, but it sounds unusual.
A native speaker would normally say, "Can you lend me your phone?" or "Can I borrow your phone?"
Both of those sound natural because the direction is clear.
Here's another example. Imagine you're at work and your laptop charger is still at home.
You turn to your coworker and say, "Can I borrow your charger for a few minutes?"
Your coworker replies, "Sure, I'll lend it to you."
That's how you'll hear it in real offices every day.
Let's change the situation. You're cooking dinner and you realize you've run out of sugar.
I walk next door and knock on my neighbor's door.
Your neighbor opens the door.
I say, "Hi, can I borrow a cup of sugar?"
Your neighbor smiles and says, "Of course, I'll lend you some."
That sounds much more natural than saying, "Can you borrow me some sugar?"
Here's another situation. You're visiting a friend for the weekend.
Suddenly, it starts raining.
You didn't bring a jacket.
So I ask, "Can I borrow your jacket while we're outside?"
Then your friend says, "Sure, I'll lend you one."
These situations happen every day, which is why these two words appear so often in English conversations.
Something else that's interesting is that native speakers don't always use these words in the same sentence.
That's true. Sometimes the answer is much shorter.
For example, "Can I borrow your headphones?"
Sure.
That's enough.
Native speakers often leave out words because the meaning is already clear.
Let's listen to another natural conversation. "I forgot my umbrella."
You can borrow mine.
Short and simple.
Or maybe someone says, "I'll lend you mine tomorrow."
Notice that native speakers aren't trying to sound formal all the time. They usually choose the simplest sentence that fits the situation.
That's something many learners don't realize. They sometimes think longer sentences sound better.
But everyday English is usually shorter.
Here's another small tip. When someone lends you something, it's polite to return it as soon as you can.
That's more about culture than grammar.
It is, but language and culture often go together.
Imagine you borrow your friend's camera for a weekend trip.
When you return it, you could simply say, "Thanks for lending me your camera. It was really helpful."
That's a sentence native speakers use naturally.
Or if you're the person giving something, you might say, "You can borrow it anytime."
Friendly, simple, and natural.
There's another point that learners sometimes miss. Borrow doesn't always mean money or objects.
That's true.
You might borrow an idea for a school project,
Or borrow a recipe from a family member.
or borrow a phrase you heard in a movie.
People also talk about borrowing time.
Someone might say, "Can I borrow 5 minutes of your time?"
Nobody is giving away 5 physical minutes. It's simply a polite way to ask if someone is available.
English is full of expressions like that, and you'll hear them in workplaces, schools, and daily conversations.
The more real conversations you listen to, the more natural these expressions become.
And before long, you won't have to stop and think about whether to use borrow or lend. You'll simply know which one fits the situation.
That's an interesting part of English because people don't always use the same expression. Sometimes they choose whatever sounds the most natural in that moment.
Imagine you're at a coffee shop with a friend. Your phone battery is almost empty, and you notice there's only one charging cable on the table.
I could ask, "Can I borrow your charger for a few minutes?"
That sounds natural.
But I could also say, "Can I use your charger for a minute?"
That's another sentence you'll hear all the time.
Both work, but they focus on slightly different ideas.
When you say borrow, everyone understands you'll give it back.
When you say use, you're simply asking for permission. Here's another example. You're visiting your brother's apartment.
I notice he has a bicycle in the hallway.
You ask, "Can I borrow your bike this afternoon?"
He replies, "Sure, just bring it back before dinner."
That's a very common conversation.
But some people might simply ask, "Can I take your bike for a ride?"
Native speakers often switch between these expressions depending on the situation.
That's why listening practice is so useful. You begin noticing different ways people express the same idea.
Let's think about the workplace again.
You're preparing for an important presentation.
Your laptop suddenly stops working.
You walk over to your manager and say, "Can I borrow one of the meeting room laptops?"
Your manager says, "Yes, you can use the spare one today."
Notice something?
The question uses borrow, but the answer uses use.
Native speakers do that naturally because the meaning is already understood.
English conversations aren't always perfectly matched like they are in textbooks.
Real conversations move naturally, and people choose words that feel comfortable.
Here's another situation. You're at the gym. You forgot your water bottle.
A friend has 2 bottles.
You ask, "Can I borrow your extra bottle until we're finished?"
Your friend smiles and says, "Go ahead."
Notice that your friend doesn't even say lend.
The answer is short because both people already understand what's happening.
That's something learners sometimes worry about.
They expect every answer to repeat the same vocabulary.
Native speakers usually don't.
Here's another everyday example.
You're in a classroom.
The teacher asks everyone to write something down.
You realize you forgot your pencil.
You quietly ask the student beside you, "Can I borrow a pencil?"
The student says, "Sure."
That's all.
Nobody feels the need to say, "Yes, I will lend you my pencil."
The shorter reply sounds more natural in casual conversation.
Let's move away from objects for a moment.
That's where learners sometimes become surprised.
People also talk about borrowing ideas.
Imagine you're planning a birthday party.
Your friend has some creative decoration ideas.
You might say, "I borrowed one of your ideas for my party."
That's completely natural English.
It doesn't mean you stole the idea. It simply means their idea inspired you.
Writers often borrow ideas.
Teachers borrow activities from one another.
Business owners borrow successful strategies they see in other companies.
Even cooks borrow recipes from family members and friends.
The word becomes much more flexible than many learners expect.
One thing I like about English is that many words grow beyond their original meaning.
That's why context matters so much.
If someone says, "I borrowed an idea," nobody imagines they're carrying an idea in a bag.
Everyone understands it means they used someone else's inspiration.
Listening to real conversations helps you notice these patterns much faster than memorizing long vocabulary lists.
And once you hear these expressions often enough, they begin to feel familiar.
I like this part because these phrases appear in conversations almost every day. Once you start noticing them, you'll hear them everywhere.
Let's begin with a simple one. Imagine you're running late for work and your car is in the repair shop.
You call your brother and say, "Can I borrow your car this morning?"
Your brother replies, "Sure, just fill up the gas tank before you bring it back."
That sounds like a very normal conversation.
It does. Now let's change it slightly. Instead of asking for the whole morning, maybe you only need it for a short time.
Then you could say, "Can I borrow your car for an hour?"
Native speakers often add a time expression because it helps the other person know how long they'll be without their item.
That's true for many things.
Can I borrow your laptop for 20 minutes?
Can I borrow your headphones until lunch?
Can I borrow your notes after class?
The time makes the request feel clear and considerate.
Now let's look at another phrase you'll hear often.
Thanks for lending me.
That's a very common sentence.
Imagine your friend lends you a suitcase before your vacation.
After your trip, you return it and say, "Thanks for lending me your suitcase. It made traveling much easier."
That's polite, simple, and very natural.
Native speakers often thank people this way because it reminds the other person that their help was appreciated.
Here's another expression.
Could I borrow?
That's a little more polite than simply saying, "Can I borrow?"
Both are common.
If you're speaking with a teacher, a manager, or someone you don't know well, you might choose, "Could I borrow?"
For example, could I borrow this chair for our meeting?
Or, "Could I borrow your phone to make a quick call?"
Small changes like that can make your English sound more natural in different situations.
Now here's an expression that many learners don't notice.
Lend a hand.
This one has nothing to do with giving someone your actual hand.
It's an idiom.
If someone says, "Can you lend me a hand?" they simply mean, "Can you help me?"
Imagine your neighbor is moving into a new apartment.
They might ask, "Can you lend me a hand with these boxes?"
They're asking for help carrying them. Nobody expects you to remove your hand and give it away.
That's one of the fun things about English idioms. They don't always mean what the words suggest.
Here's another situation.
You're helping your family prepare dinner.
There are vegetables to cut, dishes to wash, and the table still needs to be set.
Someone says, "Come and lend a hand."
That's a friendly invitation to help everyone finish faster.
You'll hear this phrase at home, at work, during community events, and even when friends are spending time together.
Let's move to another useful expression. Borrow time.
This one is interesting because nobody is giving away real time.
Imagine you're working on a project and your deadline is tomorrow.
Your manager gives you one extra day.
You might say, "I feel like I borrowed some extra time."
People also use it when they have a second chance.
It creates the idea that the extra time is valuable and shouldn't be wasted.
English uses these kinds of expressions quite often.
That's why it's helpful to learn words through conversations instead of memorizing long lists.
One conversation teaches vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and culture at the same time.
That's also how children learn their first language. They hear words used naturally over and over again.
And that's what we're trying to recreate here.
Real conversations that help you understand how native speakers communicate every day.
Once you've worked through those examples, you'll feel much more confident using both words in everyday conversations.
I like these examples because they're closer to real conversations. Life isn't always as simple as asking for a pencil in class.
Let's imagine you're working from home.
Your internet suddenly stops working just before an online meeting.
That would make anyone think quickly.
Your neighbor has a portable Wi-Fi device. You knock on the door and say, "Can I borrow your hotspot for about 30 minutes? I have an important meeting."
Your neighbor says, "Of course, I'll lend it to you until your internet comes back."
That's a natural exchange, and it shows that borrow and lend aren't limited to school supplies or books.
Technology has given us many new situations where these words are useful.
Here's another one. Imagine you're traveling with friends.
One friend packed a travel adapter, but you forgot yours.
You ask, "Can I borrow your adapter after you charge your phone?"
Your friend replies, "Sure, I'll lend it to you before I go to bed."
Again, the direction tells us which word to choose.
Now let's think about something people don't always notice.
What's that?
Sometimes native speakers don't mention the object again because everyone already knows what they're talking about.
Good point.
Imagine we've already been talking about a camera.
I ask, "Can I borrow it tomorrow?"
I answer, "Yes, I'll lend it to you."
We don't repeat the word camera because it's already part of the conversation.
That's very common in spoken English.
Learners sometimes feel they have to repeat every detail.
Native speakers usually avoid repeating information when the meaning is already clear.
Let's look at another situation.
You're helping organize a community event.
You realize you need a folding table.
You call a friend and ask, "Can I borrow your folding table this weekend?"
Your friend says, "Sure, I'll lend it to you. Just bring it back on Sunday."
Notice how adding a return time makes the conversation feel complete.
That's another habit you'll hear from native speakers.
People often mention when the item will come back, especially if it's something valuable or useful.
Now here's a situation that sometimes surprises learners.
Imagine you're learning to cook.
Your grandmother has an old family cookbook.
You ask, "Can I borrow your cookbook for a few days?"
She smiles and says, "I'd rather cook with you instead."
That's an interesting answer because she doesn't refuse the request in a direct way.
Native speakers often answer politely without simply saying yes or no.
Conversations aren't only about vocabulary, they're also about relationships.
Let's move to another example.
You're preparing for a job interview.
Your friend owns a professional-looking tie.
You ask, "Can I borrow your tie for tomorrow?"
Your friend replies, "Of course. I hope it brings you good luck."
That's the kind of friendly conversation you might hear between close friends.
Here's another small tip.
Go ahead.
When someone lends you something, returning it in good condition is part of good manners in many cultures.
If you borrowed a bicycle, clean it before giving it back.
If you borrowed a book, avoid damaging the pages.
If you borrowed someone's kitchen tool, wash it before returning it.
Those little actions show respect.
And they make people much more willing to lend you something again in the future.
Language often reflects everyday behavior.
That's one reason learning through conversations is so helpful. You're learning how people communicate and how they interact with one another.
Before we finish this segment, here's a quick challenge.
Think about something you've borrowed recently.
Maybe it was a book, a phone charger, a jacket, or even someone's advice.
Now make 2 sentences in your mind,
One sentence using borrow from your point of view.
and another sentence using lend from the other person's point of view.
If you can do that comfortably, you're already building a much stronger understanding of these 2 words.
That's one of the best ways to learn because you hear the vocabulary in context. Instead of focusing on one sentence, you hear how the conversation develops.
Let's imagine 2 coworkers, Emma and Ryan, are getting ready for a client meeting.
Emma notices that she forgot her notebook at home.
She says, "Ryan, can I borrow one of your notebooks? I need to write down the meeting notes."
Ava?
Ryan looks in his bag and says, "Sure, I brought 2 today. You can keep this one until the meeting is over."
Emma replies, "Thanks. I'll return it before we leave the office."
That conversation feels very natural because nobody explains the grammar. They simply communicate.
Now, let's imagine a different situation.
2 friends are planning a weekend camping trip.
One of them has been camping many times before.
The other has never been camping.
The new camper says, "I don't have a sleeping bag. Can I borrow yours?"
The experienced camper answers, "I only have one, but I can lend you an extra camping blanket."
That's a realistic response because people don't always have the item you're asking for.
They often offer another solution instead.
Let's move to another conversation.
A university student walks into the library.
They discover they've forgotten their student ID.
They call a roommate and say, "I left my ID on my desk. Could you bring it to the library?"
The roommate replies, "I'm in class right now, but I can lend you my library card later if you still need it."
Even though the original problem changes, lend still fits because the roommate is offering something they own.
Here's another example.
Imagine you're visiting your grandparents.
Your grandfather has an old camera.
You say, "I've always wanted to learn photography. Can I borrow your camera for the afternoon?"
He smiles and says, "You may borrow it, but I'd enjoy coming with you and showing you how it works."
That's a conversation with more than one purpose. It's not only about borrowing something, it's also about spending time together.
That's how real conversations usually work. They don't stay focused on just one sentence.
People ask questions, give suggestions, share memories, and change the topic naturally.
Let's think about another everyday moment.
You're at a family dinner.
Dessert arrives and everyone reaches for a serving spoon.
You notice the spoon is on the other side of the table.
You could simply ask, "Can I borrow the serving spoon for a second?"
Someone hands it to you without saying much.
That kind of quick exchange happens every day.
Native speakers often keep these conversations short because everyone understands the situation.
Here's one more conversation.
2 neighbors are talking outside.
One neighbor says, "I'm painting my living room this weekend."
The other neighbor replies, "I have a tall ladder if you need one."
The first neighbor says, "That would help a lot. Can I borrow it on Saturday morning?"
The second neighbor answers, "Certainly. Just let me know when you're finished."
Notice how polite and relaxed that conversation sounds?
Nobody is trying to use difficult vocabulary.
That's one thing learners sometimes forget.
Fluent English doesn't always mean complicated English.
In many situations, the simplest words are the ones native speakers choose.
That's why learning common vocabulary well is much more useful than memorizing hundreds of rare words.
If you can comfortably use words like borrow, lend, bring, take, give, and get, you'll already sound much more natural.
Those everyday words appear in conversations again and again.
Another good habit is listening for patterns instead of individual words.
For example, notice how often people say, "Can I borrow?"
Or, "I'll lend you."
After hearing those phrases many times, they become automatic.
That's one reason podcasts are such a useful learning tool.
You aren't just studying vocabulary, you're training your ears to recognize natural English.
And little by little, speaking becomes easier because the phrases are already familiar.
That's a great idea because learning becomes much easier when you can connect everything with one simple picture instead of trying to remember a long list of rules.
Let's go back to the basic idea one last time.
If something comes to you for a short time, you borrow it.
If something leaves you so another person can use it, you lend it.
That's the whole idea.
Let's test it with a few quick situations.
You're visiting a friend's house and you want to read one of their magazines.
You ask, "Can I borrow this magazine?"
Your friend says, "Sure, I'll lend it to you."
Easy. Here's another one.
Your cousin forgot a backpack for a day trip.
You have an extra one at home.
You say, "You can borrow my backpack."
From your cousin's point of view, they borrowed your backpack.
Same situation.
Different perspective.
Now imagine you're at a local sports center.
You forgot your tennis racket.
You ask the staff member, "Can I borrow a racket?"
The staff member replies, "Yes, we'll lend you one for today's game."
That's another conversation you'll hear in many places where equipment is shared.
Libraries, sports centers, community clubs, schools, and even workplaces use these words every day.
Let's think about family life. Your younger brother wants to use your headphones while you're having dinner.
He asks, "Can I borrow your headphones for 20 minutes?"
You answer, "Sure, just leave them on my desk afterward."
Short, friendly, and natural.
Here's another example. Imagine you're learning to play the guitar.
You aren't ready to buy one yet.
Your uncle has several guitars.
You ask, "Could I borrow one for a few weeks so I can practice?"
He replies, "I'd be happy to lend you one. Playing every day is the best way to improve."
That's another real-life situation where these words appear naturally.
Now let's look at something people sometimes wonder about.
What's that?
Does every language use two different words for this idea?
Not always.
That's one reason many English learners confuse them at first.
In some languages, one word can describe both giving and receiving for a short time.
English separates those ideas into two different verbs.
Once you become aware of that difference, your brain begins noticing it more often.
That's how language learning usually works.
First, you notice something.
Then you hear it repeatedly.
Then you begin using it yourself.
And one day you realize you didn't have to stop and think before speaking.
That's a rewarding moment for every language learner.
Before we finish, let's share one final memory trick.
I like this one because it's simple.
Ask yourself one question.
Am I receiving something or am I giving something?
If you're receiving it for a while, choose borrow.
If you're giving it to another person, choose lend.
That's all you need.
You don't have to memorize complicated rules.
Just think about the direction.
The direction tells you which word fits the situation.
We hope today's conversation helps you feel more confident the next time you need to ask for a book, a charger, a jacket, a notebook, or anything else.
The more real English you hear, the more these patterns become part of your everyday speaking.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. If this conversation helped you understand the difference between borrow and lend, we'd love to have you with us again for the next episode.
Don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another English learner who might find it useful. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next conversation.